What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue to break down the 2021 schedules for each team and also project what their record will be this upcoming season. For Kentucky, it was just like everyone else in the SEC, an all-SEC schedule in 2020. Looking ahead to 2021 to get that matchup with Louisville back in the non-conference. And, of course, they had to play Alabama last year. They don't have to play Alabama this year, so that is good news. They were 5-6 last season. This is the schedule. And before we get into the game-by-game schedule, let's look at who they play outside of the division, because we know who they're going to play. They're going to play all the teams in the SEC East. But outside of the division, first of all, in the non-conference, they'll play ULM, Louisiana Monroe, Chattanooga, New Mexico State, and then on the road at Louisville. Those three games outside of Louisville are going to be very easy. Let's just be honest. ULM has had some decent years in the past, but last year they were horrible. New Mexico State, one of the worst teams outside of the Power 5, and then Chattanooga, an FCS team. That's not a bad non-conference schedule at all. Now, Louisville, how good will they be? They weren't great last year. They were kind of a surprise a couple of years, so it's hard to really say about this team. And it's definitely not a huge task for Kentucky. I mean, that's definitely a winnable game. They'll probably be favored in that game. So, yes, non-conference schedule, not bad at all for the Wildcats. And then out of the SEC West, they play Mississippi State every year. That's their crossover rival. They'll play them on the road this year, so they're going to have to deal with the Cowbells. And then they'll also play LSU. They will play LSU this year, which I think is a pretty tough draw. I think LSU is the second or third best team in the West, but you avoid Alabama, and you're going to have to play a team like LSU or Texas A&M probably. So not a bad draw there at all. So Kentucky's schedule outside of the division looking pretty good. They start with ULM again on September the 4th. That'll be a home game, and then they jump right into SEC play the next week against Missouri on September 11th. That is going to be a big game, and a game that I think it could potentially be a battle for third place in the SEC East, whoever wins that game. It depends on how good Florida's going to be. It could potentially even be a battle for second place in the SEC East. So that's a big game early in the year as far as the standings go. They have Chattanooga after that on September 18th. Then they'll play on the road at South Carolina. That appears to be a game that Kentucky will be favored in. Florida after that on October the 2nd. A big game there, and if they are going to challenge in the East and maybe challenge for the number 2 spot, they probably will have to beat Florida at home. That's a game you got to get. And it used to be that we wouldn't even talk about Kentucky beating Florida. They lost so many years in a row, and now we're starting to see them compete. They beat them, and it's a game that Kentucky's going to look at as being a potential win. LSU the next week on October the 9th. That's a couple of tough games back to back, but at home. That's the good news. LSU and Florida back-to-back there at home. But then it's Georgia after that on October 16th. So we're talking about a brutal 3-game stretch. Florida, LSU, and on the road at Georgia. It does not get much tougher than that in the SEC. And then they do get a bye week, though. They get a bye week after Georgia. So it's back-to-back road games here, but not back-to-back weeks. They'll have a bye week between Georgia and Mississippi State. Again, have to deal with the Cowbells there, playing the Bulldogs. Then Tennessee on November the 6th. Vanderbilt November 13th. So you can see here, once you get to the end of October, really starting, I guess, with Mississippi State, the schedule lightens up. It's right there in the middle. Florida, LSU, and Georgia. That's the tough part of the schedule. So Vanderbilt November 13th. Then they'll play New Mexico State on November 20th. Louisville on the road November 27th. And again, it's great to have that rivalry back this year. But again, when you look at the schedule for Kentucky, if you take out Florida, LSU, Georgia, now that's a brutal stretch, like I said. You take that out of the schedule and just look at the other 9 games, this is a really nice schedule for Kentucky. I mean, a really nice schedule. You get Missouri at home. That is probably the toughest game from the rest of those games. And then you've got, Mississippi State's going to be a tough one on the road. That's probably their toughest game on the road outside of Georgia, I would say. Tennessee, Vanderbilt, South Carolina going to be down this year. So you get 3 games that are going to be, I wouldn't say wins, but games where Kentucky's going to be favored in the East. And then you also get 3 easy non-conference games. So you're looking at 6 wins. If you take care of business in those games that you should, there's a very easy path to 6 wins for Kentucky. Now, again, there are some tough stretches here, going from Florida to Georgia, That's brutal. There are going to be tough games. Mississippi State on the road is going to be a tough game. Louisville is probably going to be a tough game. Missouri in week 2 going to be a tough game. But all in all, I would say Kentucky's schedule for 2021 is very favorable compared to some of the other teams in the SEC. Kentucky was 1 point away from a 500 record in SEC play last year, losing that game to Ole Miss by 1 in overtime. If they win that game, Kentucky goes 500 again in an all SEC schedule. And then if you throw in the bowl game, this team finishes over 500. So again, a good year for Kentucky. Not a great year, but it was a solid year for them. And looking ahead to 2021, let's project what their record could be. Again, this is the schedule, a schedule that is not too tough. If you're new to this series, this is how we do this. We kind of group these games together. If it's a 50-50 game, we're going to leave it in white. That's a game that I think could really go either way. You got your less than 10% in red, 10 to 25% in orange, 26 to 40% in yellow, 60 to 74% in purple, 75 to 90 in blue. If it's over 90%, it's going to be in green, and that's where we're going to start. So the easy wins on this schedule for Kentucky, I think you've got some. You've got 3 of them. I think ULM, Chattanooga, and New Mexico State are all almost guaranteed wins. ULM, not very good last year. New Mexico State, one of the worst teams outside of the Power 5. It's not like they're playing UCF or Cincinnati. I mean, I know some group of 5 teams are going to give you a challenge, but I don't think you're going to get one from these two, and then Chattanooga and FCS teams. So you've got 3 wins right out of the gate. Really should have no trouble with any of these opponents. Then we're actually going to skip over the blue. I don't have any teams in the blue. We got 3 teams in the purple. These are games where I think Kentucky will be favored by about a touchdown, 6, 7, 8 points, somewhere in there. I know South Carolina and Vanderbilt are on the road. Vanderbilt would be in the blue probably if it was at home, but playing on the road, I guess you never know. But again, I think Kentucky's going to be a clear favorite in all 3 of these matchups. All 3 teams are going through some rough times right now. New head coaches, a lot of guys leaving. So I don't really see Kentucky. They should win those games, but they're not going to be games where they have no chance. I mean, they have a chance to lose. So these are, again, going to be purple games where they're favored by about a touchdown. Now we flip to the other side. How about games where they're underdogs? We'll start with the orange. We got 1 game in orange. That's Georgia. This is the 1 game on the schedule that I would say Kentucky really just can't win. I mean, it's possible. You never know, but it would be a big shocker. And that's kind of crazy to think about. If Kentucky winds up having a really good year and they're better than maybe we think, there's a possibility this team could go 11-1, and that would just be, again, crazy. But again, every other game on this schedule there's a chance for them to win outside of, I think, Georgia. So this is the 1 loss. The games where I think, though, they're going to be pretty clear underdogs, about a touchdown underdog, you've got a couple of those games, Florida and LSU. So again, from Florida to Georgia, the toughest 3 games on their schedule are all 3 in a row. That is very, very tough. I think they'll have a shot against Florida, a shot against LSU, but they're going to be about a touchdown underdog. It's kind of the reverse of the purple. Instead of being a touchdown favorite, they'll be about a touchdown underdog. And again, I think they will clearly be underdogs in both of those matchups, but they're not so much that they can't win them. They'll have a chance, I think, in both of those games. And that leaves Missouri, Mississippi State, and Louisville. These are the swing games. These are the games that I think could really go either way. I would probably favor Missouri. I don't know. Missouri, Kentucky's very close. Both teams, I think, are going to be pretty good this year. It's one that I really just don't want to predict right now. And again, this is not an official prediction. It's simply a projection. I know Missouri beat them last year, but this year it's going to be at home for Kentucky. So I guess you never know. It's a tough one to pick. Kind of the same story with Mississippi State, except maybe in reverse. Last year, Kentucky actually won that game 24-2. They won easily. But this year, they're going to go on the road. So that's going to be a tougher matchup. I mean, those 2 games right there are the definition of 50-50 games. I mean, they really could both go either way. Louisville's a game I think I would favor Kentucky, but it's hard to say because we just don't know how good this Louisville team will be. It's on the road. I know Kentucky has really dominated that series as of late, but it's still a rivalry, and you still never know. So those 3 games, to me, are the swing games. Those are the games that will determine if Kentucky has a pretty good year or a really good year. Because if they win all 3 of those and take care of business in their other games, they're looking at 9-3. And that would be, again, a really, really good year for the Wildcats. So how about the projection? This is what we do. We count the blue and the green, which you don't have any blue here, but the green we count as a win. We count the orange as a loss. Then we average the other games out. With yellow, it'll be 40%. White, it'll be 50%. and then purple will be 60%, and we just average those numbers out. It's just a kind of a formula that I made to do these projections. And again, this is not a prediction, simply just a projection based on the schedule. And when you do that math, the projection for Kentucky comes out to be 7-5. So 7-5, I think, is a pretty fair assessment for this team. Really, it comes down to 8 games. You've got 3 we think they're going to win. You got 1 they're going to lose. It comes down to those other 8 games. And the projection would pretty much have them splitting those. You got some you'll be favored in, some you'll be an underdog, some that are really 50-50 games. And so the projection would put them really splitting those games and going 4-4 in those matchups, finishing the season off 7-5, which would not be a great year, but still a pretty solid year. And I think we've come to expect Kentucky to do this every year. They're a 7-5, 8-4 team every year, it seems like. Mark Stoops has done an excellent job with this Kentucky program. And I think 7-5, well, once again, is going to be an expectation, but it's a low projection because I think they have a chance to maybe even do better than that.